Welcome all in everybody to another edition of the unofficial WCZ Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer. That's Thomas Dunn. We've got a lot to get into. We'll be recapping the games that happened during the course of the midweek. We'll preview what's coming up on Saturday. We'll also have St. Mary's guard Josh Dent hop in, and we will talk to him about St. Mary's very tight win against Seattle U just the other night, and of course what we are going to see over the last week and a half from the Gaels. So that will be in just a little bit. But we're going to start with what the big news is that came out right before all the Wednesday games happened this week, and that is that San Diego and Steve Lavin have decided to part ways. This is after 4 seasons for Steve Lavin at the helm. He will finish the season with San Diego. They have 3 more games than the conference tournament. But after that, the two have decided that it is time to move in different directions. And honestly, like, this comes as no surprise to either of us that this move was made. And honestly, this is a scenario, a San Diego team, a San Diego, like USD as a program, that there always feels like there's a lot of potential. We just have not been able to kind of see this come to fruition over the last, really 20 years.
Yeah, it's been tough, and I know you have a stat dating back to their last time that they made the NCAA tournament that will let you. I won't spoil it for the rest because you did the hard digging on that one. But just in general, just really a lot of missed opportunities over the course of last year. San Diego just ultimately never really could put it together under Steve Lavin, and it was getting to be rubber meets the road territory in terms of getting those results. You see the news recently with Tyler Johnson bowing out and eventually will be entering the transfer portal, and it's just. Especially with the new upgrades and the new facilities and all that, this was supposed to be the year where you saw it officially turn around, I guess, for good, for lack of a better phrase, and it just didn't happen. So San Diego, if this was going to always be a decision if they didn't get it done this season, and then this is exactly what they took. And to say what you said about them dismissing him, it's good. Lavin's always good to talk to. It's fun to interact with him and such. But similar to Lorenzo Romar at Pepperdine, we'll finish the season. So we'll see what the Toreros can do in the final games that they'll have Steve Lavin as the head coach. But I am intrigued to see how this job kind of is looked at from an external perspective, especially when you look at the new facilities, the supposed NIL dollars that are getting invested in this program, especially as they dub it, America's finest city. So there's lots to like about what this opening can be, and I'm intrigued to see the level of interest that's getting engaged from around the country.
I mean, it's obviously like the city of San Diego should be a huge feather in the cap, just something that everyone kind of looks toward in general, because I mean, there's not many locations that are kind of better, but it's really thinking about that program. It's thinking about the conference they're going to be in moving forward. Like a WCC without Gonzaga, without Washington State, without Oregon State, but adds Denver, adds UC San Diego. You'll have a natural crosstown rival in conference in the coming years. But it just didn't work out. You mentioned that stat that I was kind of had in my back pocket looking through. I mean, they are one of the few teams in the WCC that has actually been to the NCAA tournament other than Gonzaga St. Mary's this century. They made it back in 2008, which was a really good, really fun Torero team. And that group, they had to beat St. Mary's. They had to beat Gonzaga in the WCC tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. They beat UConn in that same NCAA tournament. But since that year, the Toreros have had only 4 seasons where they've had a winning record. And probably more ridiculous and kind of harrowing is the fact that in that same time period, they've had 5 years where they've had fewer than 10 wins in a season. So you want to talk about the fact that this is a program that really has not done a whole lot in the last 15 or so years, but seems like there's a lot of potential. The facilities are great. We've seen them invest in the basketball facility. We know that there are at least a bit more NIL dollars, a few more NIL dollars now than there was. I think it's going to be a question of what direction do they go when it comes to looking for the new head coach? Because I was talking with a few people just kind of throughout the week of just where do you go? How do you kind of in a league like the WCC, what direction do you want? Like, do you want to go young coach who's never had the opportunity? Do you want to go older seasoned coach who has kind of gone through the ringer, knows the ropes and everything else? Because we've seen both sides of it in WCC hirings, where you can kind of point to like the Todd Goldens, the Stan Johnsons, the Shante Legans versus say like a Herb Sendek, a Lorenzo Romar. Like we've seen kind of both ends. Dave Smart as well, like just kind of both ends of which way you want to go. And I mean, to me, for San Diego, like I think I would go a little bit more of a seasoned veteran coach, even though that's kind of what they did do with Lavin, but maybe one that doesn't carry as much of like the flash, but maybe someone I almost kind of do look like a Dave Smart or Herb Sendek as kind of the examples of maybe what San Diego should target, because I think it's going to be a fairly attractive job, and we saw that with even like the job rankings that Field of 68 put out just last week.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned the seasoned vet, a name that I've seen getting floated around, and I'm not going to pretend that I know, what his agent is trying to leverage and such as Craig Smith, the former coach at Utah State, and Utah didn't have a successful stint with the Utes and eventually was dismissed. So I'd be intrigued to kind of see what it's like if his name becomes more serious in this job hunt. But I'm going to take the other side and say, go with someone who's youthful, local to the area, someone who's been grinding to it, and that's Justin Downer over at Point Loma Nazarene is a name I've seen get floated around. When you think of rising up from the D2 ranks, that's a program that has been winning, and they've been winning a lot of games over the course of the last few years. So I've seen it get floated from a lot of San Diego people who are like, why not tap into the local scene, so to speak. I know there's been, say, look at the San Diego State bench and understanding that basically what is Brian Dutcher's de facto coach in waiting. I know there's been a lot of talk about, how do you run against the Aztecs timeline and trying to make sure that things are going well. And San Diego may want to give the, I guess, so to speak, give the crack to, let me make sure I have his name right, David Velasquez. So for me, that's kind of how I look at it and things along that front. So it's definitely an interesting, I guess, line of thinking, because they could really just pivot like this more than anything between like the old guard and the new guard. But I definitely look at a guy like Justin Downer, especially in your backyard. If I'm Kimmy Massey, at minimum, I'm doing my due diligence about what he could potentially do with these resources at this level, given his resume of winning.
Yeah, and this is very early on in the start of coaching search season. You think he's only the second coach who's been dismissed so far this season. So plenty more spots will open up. We know this is going to be the case across the entire landscape of college basketball. So yeah, some interesting early names, some fun early names, but we will see where San Diego ends up in this. Now, we're going to get to the basketball side of it, what happened on Wednesday, and we're going to start off with what happened, the near scare that happened up at Climate Pledge Arena as St. Mary's survives Seattle U 72-70. JoJo Murphy did have an opportunity at the end there to win the game, but it just clanked off the rim. St. Mary's had to play the last 6 minutes without Paulus Morauskas. They had to really grind this game out. I mean, this was a game where it felt like they were in control very early on. They were up double digits, up by 14 at one point, and Seattle U just climbed back into this game, crawled back in. And the name that popped out, the name that kind of really stepped up into it was Mikey Lewis. 22 points, 5 rebounds for the sophomore, 8 for 16 from the field. They needed every last bucket from him, and he was the guy who took charge once Paulus Morauskas left, had to leave the game.
Yeah, and that was always, to me, an interesting question, because Morauskas plays so many minutes, and Randy Bennett is pretty self-aware in that respect of, yeah, we put such a heavy load on Morauskas, and it's a lot to ask of him. So when he fouls out with 6 minutes to go, given the fact that he kind of picked up some of these second half fouls in quick succession, no less. I think that was kind of one of the other things. Randy Bennett kind of had his own personal timeline. Morauskas kind of picks up 2 in a flurry, and then boom, things are almost, I guess, off the rails, so to speak, at least in terms of the in-game rotations. And what stood out to me, at least from the situation once it started happening with 6:07 left, is it's gut check time for all the youth. This is a more youthful St. Mary's team than we're used to than in years past. And if there was ever a time to say, okay, what have we learned? What have we taken away from all the different situations we've put in this season? And where are you going to mature within the scope of the season? This is it right here. Got to have it, because we've both been in agreement, and I know you know this now. I mean, Seattle U is a very capable team. I think they're a really good team. I think their record is not indicative of how good that team is. And I think going forward, they're going to be a thorn in the side of many WCC schools once they kind of get their footing for the talent level they have. And there are a bunch of guys to like. You mentioned Murphy and kind of the lasting sequence on that. I mean, I'm always going to look at Will Heimbrough and say, that's a dude. That's a dude right there. But when I look at St. Mary's, it's like the youth, in acknowledging that Mikey Lewis was the guy who took him home and kind of some of the experiences he's already had in his young career. I mean, some of the other youth were tasked with stepping up to the plate. And I look at Andrew McKeever. I think he had a pretty steady game, all things considered. And it was a real gut check moment for a lot of the guys. And I would say, St. Mary's survived. And that's exactly what they had to do given the circumstances.
I mean, it was just such a challenge because there was, not only did you lose Paulus Moralskis, I mean, some guys just didn't have as good of a games as we're used to seeing. And Dylan Shaw had all of 3 points in this one. Josh Dent was 1 for 7 from the field. So there were definitely some challenges, and credit to Seattle U because they made it difficult. And this isn't the first time that they've made it difficult on St. Mary's. You have to remember that back in Moraga about a month and a half ago, it's like this was a ball game for about the first 32 minutes of the game before St. Mary's finally pulled away. So again, to the point of like, now we're so far into the season that to an extent of like, well, you kind of are what your record says you are. But I mean, there have been so many close calls, specifically with Seattle U, that it's hard to not kind of think about that. They're better than the 5-10 record in conference play that they have. Like, they have been competitive with the top teams in the league. They have obviously not been able to pull any of those out, but they've shown that they are going to stay in those games, be competitive. And you know what? Like, that's a scenario that you get into a neutral court site like Vegas for the tournament, then Seattle U could be one of those teams that really makes a run. And there's a lot of bunching there toward the middle and bottom of the league, trying to stay out of that 9 through 12 window is going to be tough. And we'll get into kind of the standings and what that's going to look like in a little bit. But St. Mary's, this was a game that I don't think we both thought this was going to be easy. We thought this was going to be a tough one. We thought this was going to be a little bit of a grinder, and it was up at Climate Pledge. And St. Mary's won. Like, the bottom line is that they walked out, and sometimes you have to walk out with a scare. I mean, think about Santa Clara back with Washington State and how much of a scare that game was. And you know what? You have to go out on the road and just get these wins. And that's the kind of the bottom line. St. Mary's was able to handle it. We'll talk to Josh Dent in just a little bit as he's going to join us, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail. Gaels have Washington State on Saturday, and that's going to be another one that is going to be just a great challenge because we never know which of those Washington State teams is actually going to show up.
Yeah, that's fair. And, you may have just had the understatement of the whole season saying, the little conglomerate in the middle of the pack in the WCC. Absolutely none of it being decided this late in the season. There's still a lot more to go. And I think the one thing I do want to close the book on, or at least for the Seattle U perspective, is you mentioned like the records and stuff, and the record kind of, it is what you say you are at this point in the season. But not all records are created equal. I think that's kind of important to contextualize. And yes, at face value, you're 5-10, but also Seattle U could have and arguably should have beat Gonzaga in the kennel. Seattle U arguably had a shot, and they did, to win against St. Mary's, and even without Braden Maldonado, no less. Seattle U, they kept Santa Clara honest all throughout the second half, and probably one last mini burst, they could have won that game. So I think when you look at that 5-10 conference record, it's not all of those are created equal, especially given the way you look at the other teams surrounding them, the San Diegos, the Portlands, the LMUs, the Oregon States. Everyone's got their own different journey to the respective record they're at relative to expectation. I think Seattle U, when we kind of look at it and contextualize what their record is in the grand scheme of things, it's easy to say that, okay, yeah, they've had a few get away, and it's kind of been closer than some others would indicate. When you look at St. Mary's, and you mentioned the close road games, I mean, survive in advance, like we talk about it, unironically, and we say the phrase that we've heard for years on end now. But that's exactly the case, especially on the road. I get that Seattle, you didn't have Brandon Maldonado, and you're expecting it to be a little bit easier in that respect. But conference games are not linear. Like, despite the records that the Gaels and the Broncos have, like, you're not going to walk in there and just put your brand of basketball in there. You're not going to do it for a full 40 minutes. You're not going to do it each and every game. You have to find different ways to win. And St. Mary's did that against Seattle U. Santa Clara did that against Washington State. And hell, if you want to even look at it from the Gonzaga perspective, they had the flat tire at Portland. People weren't expecting that to happen. And that's just kind of indicative of you got to get into the well different times to try and find ways to win. And St. Mary's did that, and they had to have it, just like Santa Clara had to have it against Washington State. And both teams with some, well, I'll call it some not eyebrow raising, but games where you got to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's at Washington State for the Gaels and at USF for the Broncos.
Now, Santa Clara was idle on Wednesday, but they will pick it up on Saturday. But on the other end, the first place team in the conference, Gonzaga, went down to Chase Center, which will probably be their final appearance at Chase Center, taking on the Dons, and they rolled in this one. This one was competitive for maybe the first 6 to 7 minutes before Gonzaga really kind of took over in this one. Graham Ike having another great game in this one. We continue to just see Gonzaga really start to kind of look like maybe the team that we all hoped we would see. We saw Mario St. Saperi have a great game, 14.6 assists. I think about this one and we both talked about it beforehand that we thought this one could get out of hand. It obviously got out of hand, and you were there to see at least the back half of this one as you were kind of making your road trip back up to the city. This one just felt kind of almost academic for the Zags at this point because of the ways the Dons have played, but also the way Gonzaga has kind of weathered the storm to a bit of getting through the non-EK games, getting through the early games without Braden Huff. And here they are kind of on the other end, about a win or so away from another conference championship.
Yeah, they're also close to it. And I would argue in certain sports, they only played like a B-level game at certain points. I think the thing that stands out is, one, they were doing a great job at forcing turnovers and getting out in transition. Massive credit to Emmanuel Innocente. He just doesn't get the credit he deserves, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Adam Miller continues to get unlocked. I think that can pay a bunch of dividends down the line. I think that's a ceiling changer, especially when you look at a Zag team that has pounded the ball inside a lot more this season. Graham Ike also starting to – we got Graham Ike hitting sidestep threes in the big 2026. Like, we are – I mean, if you thought it was a problem before, it's a whole lot of a bigger problem now and trying to guard him. But just in general, lots of guys had their imprint on the game, I think, is what stands out. The depth is coming together. And despite the shorter rotation and despite, some of the health of Jalen Worley, I know he's banged up quite a bit. Like, the guys within that short rotation are contributing, and that's good to see at this time of year. Davis Fogel, I think, he's having a stellar month, I think, more than anything. And it was a question of, especially when you look back to the start of the season, what were we going to get considering the lack of minutes that were available at that point? And then, given the circumstances of what's happened, I think Davis Fogel was past the test and then some in terms of being opportunistic, being ready, and eventually executing. So that's what kind of stood out USF. I mean, it was probably our biggest, I'll go back to it, it's probably our biggest misevaluation of the season. The construction just wasn't good, and a bunch of silly turnovers, really unforced, a lack of creation, and it's just hard to operate when those two things are going against you on a consistent basis, and especially when you don't have the beef to match up inside against the likes of Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and Santa Clara.
You mentioned Emmanuel Innocente, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 steals in that game the other night. One of the other things that kind of jumps out and mention Mario St. Superi with his 14 and 6, 33 minutes in this game. Braden Smith only getting 2 minutes in this ball game. I think we've started to see it more and more that this is the way the point guard position is going to go for Gonzaga. I think from here on out, it's going to be Mario St. Superi in the bulk of minutes because he has continued to just get better and better. And when he is on, it is a difference maker for the Zags. Like, they look like a different team when he is playing at his best. Like, he moves the ball great. Like, obviously he knows how to attack the basket and get his shot. He knows how to find others in rhythm. It really, I think, we're starting to see this Zag team find its, like, we already know they've kind of found that identity without Braden Huff. And as we found out, it might be even longer that we're going to be without Braden Huff. We'll get to that in a bit, but the Zags, I kind of thought about it, looked at it, like they've pretty much passed all the tests, like all the challenges, all the things we kind of talked about, like, oh, they had a slow night here. Yeah. They lost to Portland. They have the misstep here, whatever else. But when you look up, like, they're 26-2. they're 14-1 WCC play. You can complain about a lot of things, but when you take a look up at their records, like they've done nothing to show that they're not going to just be the exact same Zags team that we've seen over the last X number of years. And that I kind of going into this one, I mean, they're right now, I mean, obviously they're in the driver's seat. They've got still a few more games left. Pacific coming in is going to be a challenge for them. But yeah, I think we're like, they're finding their way right now.
100%, and very it's gonna be very close down the stretch. And you look at those things. There's something to be said for just keep on winning, and that's exactly what they're doing. And you mentioned the challenge ahead, and lots of challenges ahead for the top three as they try and get what they want.
All right. Well, with St. Mary's coming off their theatrical win over the other night against Seattle U, with Washington State coming up on the road, we're happy to bring in Josh Dent, St. Mary's point guard. Josh, got to ask, how much did you hold your breath when that last shot went up from JoJo Murphy to be able to kind of seal that win?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a scary moment considering it was my free throw that I missed. But I kind of had a good angle, could see it was off to the side, so I was telling everyone I wasn't worried at all. But yeah, heart was in the mouth for a second there.
Well, you've had a lot thrown on your plate this season. I think it's fair to say that with the Augustus Marciulionis graduating and moving on, the keys, for lack of a better phrase, were given to you and trying to stir the drink that is the St. Mary's offense. How do you kind of quantify the impact of what Augustus kind of showed to you your freshman season, and how eventually you've embraced the challenge of getting that full workload as a point guard this season for St. Mary's?
Yeah, last year Goose helped me tremendously just by just being himself. He didn't have to say anything special to me. It was just kind of watch what he does and just take notes basically. And then yeah, heading into this year, it was obviously a lot of talk with coaches, with the leaders of the group, and just building trust that way. Particularly on the offensive end, we've been a little different than previous years. We still want to clean up some like shooting percentages, turnovers, those sort of things, which I think we can look to do. And then on the defensive side, make sure we're still being physical and into the ball and good ball pressure. But Goose had a lot to do with that, whether he knows it or not, just by watching him and things like that.
I mean, this team going in was going to have a very different personality. I mean, you lose Augustus Marciulionis, Mitchell Saxon, Luke Barrett, the three seniors of the group last year, and it was going to be a lot younger of a team this year. How going into the year, how much kind of did the group of younger guys, like maybe like you, Mikey, McKeever, kind of take that upon yourself to kind of say like, hey, this is going to be a different look, a different feel, but this is kind of now our team to kind of run with?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we had too many conversations about it. It was kind of just a known thing. We'd all look each other in the eye every time some new news would come up, and just know that we were going to have to be the guys to spearhead this attack. Obviously, Wes, our lone senior, is doing a great job, but he understands that it's not a one-man job. Everyone understands it's not a one-man job. And he's really been good at allowing us younger guys to sort of step in and help him out when needed. So, yeah, it's been good so far, but we definitely need to keep trying to push the envelope.
When you take a look inside the St. Mary's program, it's obviously easy to see the connection that Australia has had with the Gaels program and such. And even this season, having Australian Heritage Night, yourself, Rory Hawk, Harry Wessels, how do you kind of explain the relationship and how you kind of built your own specific relationship with the Gaels program? Because sometimes it's not easy to be that far away from home and still trying to produce at a high level mentally. How has the transition been, all things considered, and how have you witnessed that specific connection from your own perspective between the Gaels program and your home country?
I'd say kind of most Australians know about St. Mary's. It's kind of, like I've said it before, like, you know about Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, and then for some reason you know about St. Mary's. And looking into that, it's like, why would I really care? And then you look into the history with Cape Horn and Kickett starting it off, and then obviously Delhi, Paddy, those guys coming along, Jock Landale. So everyone knows the names, everyone knows the story, and just to be recruited by them pretty early on in my recruitment journey, I kind of knew that if I were to choose St. Mary's, that I would be felt very comfortable. And yeah, pretty much first stepped on campus and already knew Rory, already knew Harry. Had great relationships with the coaches, and still having those Australian guys even come in for open gym during the summer. It's just a good little environment where you can feel safe and like you're very welcomed.
I always kind of think about, because there's been so many Aussies in there, I would have thought that maybe like Randy would have actually picked up an Australian accent at some point, like having you guys having that influence on the locker room somewhere down the road.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of sayings that he's been able to pick up, but yeah, the accent's still a while off, I think.
I mean, you kind of. Go ahead.
Go for it.
I was going to say, because I want to dive further in that relationship. You and Rory Hawk arriving on campus at the same time. What's it kind of been like, dating back to your time in Australia, working together along that front, and kind of taking the challenge on together specifically? Someone who's kind of been with you in your own specific journey and kind of realizing the challenge together now at the D1 level.
Yeah, so I knew both Rory and Harry at the RAS, the Centre of Excellence in Australia. Wes obviously came a fair bit earlier, and then Rory even came a year and a half earlier than me, so he'd already been pretty comfortable here. But I would say I had very strong relationships with both of them, in particular Rory. From Canberra, we would hang out all the time, go shoot, go play golf, do whatever. So when I got here, I was very comfortable, moved straight into an on-campus thing with him and Cade Bennett. So literally my first week, I was just sleeping on a random bed in their apartment, and I couldn't have been more happy with who I was around and the situation I was in. But I think that kind of allows us we spend a lot of time playing basketball, we spend a lot of time in class doing all this stuff. So knowing you're going to be doing it with people that you know and building strong relationships definitely helps with that.
You mentioned the golf. Like, who's the better golfer?
Rory's got me at the moment. We actually haven't been able to play in the cold weather as much, and I'll blame maybe some bumps from games and stuff, but Rory's definitely got me. So hopefully this upcoming summer we can get back out there and continue to build on that front.
Yeah. Does he have a bit more of the long game, or does he have like a good short game? And what do you think your strength is?
Rory's definitely a long game. I pride myself on my short game, chipping and putting. So he kind of gets us off the tee, and then from there, just see what happens.
Have you gotten any tips from Luke Barrett? I know, avid golfer from last year's Gaels team and beyond.
Yeah, well, we actually would play with him. Kevin Gadd's pretty into it as well. Wes will come and play. So we have a good little group. We've been talking to Luke. Like, he's obviously over in Poland right now. He said he can't wait to come back and play a couple of rounds with us. So we'll definitely use those experiences just to kind of get away from basketball and get away from everything as well.
What's it like, kind of
course you've already hit?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
What's that?
Do you have a favorite course that you've been able to play on?
We actually went out to the Northwood Golf Club, the public 9-hole out in the Redwoods. It's a pretty famous public course, so that was pretty fun. Probably like a 2-hour drive away from Moraga.
Hey, there's a lot, as you know, and as you get your game going here in the Bay Area, there's a lot of options, especially you get towards the city. You got a million courses out in the East Bay. There's a million courses, especially over in the hills. So definitely look forward to hearing as you guys get more, especially towards the off season. I do want to circle back a little bit more towards this season. Now, can you walk through what's kind of like a game day routine for Josh Dent as you kind of get yourself warmed up and ease into a game day?
On the road, it's definitely different. Just obviously being in the hotel changes a lot of things. We're kind of doing everything as a team, so you do get your personal downtime, but it's very much situated on what we're doing as a team. I'd say at home, it's crazy now with class back as well. You have to take that into account. But yeah.
All right. And kind of talk a little bit more again. We'll talk about the games now a little bit more in depth. I mean, you guys have a couple of weeks left of the season. Washington State, Santa Clara, and Gonzaga coming up. As you've kind of as you've kind of gone through the season, you've already played each of these teams once. When you're kind of going into round 2 against teams, what's maybe the differences in practice or in your prep that go into it, especially when you're thinking about and I don't even know if like the stakes of what is coming up kind of play into that, knowing that you still are playing a little bit of catch up with Gonzaga, playing a little bit of catch up with Santa Clara because they won the first round. What sort of prep does kind of go into round 2 when you're facing off with these squads?
Yeah, I'd say the second time around is definitely a lot more scout dependent. While we already know each other from years, you know, the coaches are and especially Coach Bennett have played so many times. Santa Clara have also played each other so many times. So it's like there's only so much scout you can do based on offenses, but personnel, who's kind of leading the team at this time. Like when we played Washington State earlier, they were very on-ball guard dependent. Now it's, you know, a lot more doubles away. Vavis is getting going, hitting threes. So it's like, yeah, we need who's rolling at that certain time. But yeah, it's kind of good knowing that everything's right in front of us. We've been given an opportunity to go win the league, and all we need to do is literally win out. We got to take care of business on the road, and then we get to go back to ours and hopefully just show what we can do.
Coach Bennett has been pretty matter of fact that he's put a lot on Polis's plate. He's put a lot on your plate. When you look at the minutes and you're getting your first career minutes last year and having a season high of 13 in all the different games you got in last season, what surprised you most about your own specific journey in this season and getting that higher workload of minutes and eventually trying to execute on both ends of the floor for the Gaels?
Yeah, so I was definitely thrown into the deep end a little bit. Not that I wasn't told what was going to be happening, but yeah, those first couple of games, I'm looking over at the bench saying, I wouldn't mind a sub here. I'm kind of dying out here, but obviously talking to Mickey and Joe and EJ, it's that 40 minutes point guard is a badge of honor, and it's not something that you need to take lightly. So knowing that most of the games, if it's a close game, if I'm not in foul trouble, that I will be out there for a majority of the game is something that I don't take lightly, and make sure that I can control the runs. Obviously against good teams like Santa Clara and Gonzaga, there will be runs. They will have their time. So it's just being sure we can keep everyone composed. I think we've done a good job this year of just staying composed. You saw against Seattle, everything happened. There was a tech, there was fouls, there was all sorts of stuff, and we managed to stay together and pull that one out. So I kind of pride myself on making sure everyone's all guns pointed the same direction.
Now you mentioned the assistants, Mickey, EJ, and Joe. I mean, the fact that you have 3 former St. Mary's point guards on the bench, probably as a point guard yourself, probably is kind of like just a wealth of knowledge of. It's kind of talk a little bit more about like just those 3 and kind of what they've meant to your development, because again, like having 3 guys from really 3 different eras of St. Mary's basketball who've kind of been able to kind of share their experiences and be able to help kind of guide you on the path.
Yeah, I can't measure that against anything else I've ever had. You know, like you think your experiences are kind of unique, and then you literally just go talk to them, and it's like, oh, they've been through it. They can help me through it this time as well. Like you mentioned, it was 3 different eras, which I think is sick. Like none of them really played with each other, so they all had their own experience. But under Coach Bennett, everyone knows what's expected. Obviously, it's changed throughout the years, but yeah, their wealth of knowledge has been super important. Knowing I have people who think similarly to me, I could go to them in a timeout at halftime, talk about adjustments and what they're seeing. Half the time off on balls, I'm not even the one making the read. I'm told before the time, this guy's going to be helping, throw it here. And it's like, okay, now I don't have to think. I can just do it. So that definitely helps, yeah.
They've been there. They've done that. One of the other relationships you have on the court is from point guard to post connection. You and Andrew McKeever have been developing a nice connection. What's it been like working with him, and where have you seen his development kind of skyrocket the most?
Yeah, Drew's been incredible this year. Obviously, last year was kind of tough behind Saxy and Wes. But I think we've all said it, we all knew what he was capable of, and I was so excited to see him out there and get the minutes he deserves. And I mean, it just helps. His feel for the game is kind of uncanny for how big and how much crowd he can attract. Just standing on the post is pretty insane. So just talking through him, we have a great connection off the court as well. So just talking through what we see out there. Like I said, his feel for the game, his passing abilities, second to none. So knowing that I can trust to put the ball into him late game and he's going to make the right play has been huge for us.
The last one from myself, this is dating all the way back to Media Day when we talked to Mikey, Harry, and Coach Bennett. Mikey said that the list of class clowns for this year's St. Mary's Gaels team was Mikey himself, Jazz Gardner, and Trent McLean. Can you confirm or deny, as the season has played out, that those indeed have been the class clowns and helping move things along, especially off the court for St. Mary's?
I would 100% agree with all three of those. And I'd even throw in maybe Martis Uzenis, just purely off some European flair and some stuff like that. But I would 100% agree.
All right. We'll catch up with you once we get to Vegas. But thanks a lot for hopping on.
Sounds good. See you later. Bye.
Appreciate it.
All right. So we did have a few different audio and connection challenges there toward the end, but wanted to thank Josh Dent for hopping on and be able to kind of talk about his journey, St. Mary's, where they are right now. And of course, the Gaels will be taking on Washington State at the Palouse. And it's a big one because for both these squads, Washington State is just a game back of fourth place, and they did take care of the fourth place team just the other night in Pacific. St. Mary's, coming off their scare, is needing to keep pace with both Santa Clara and Gonzaga to have a shot at still the first finishing with a regular season championship. It is still a possibility for St. Mary's to be able to not only be the 1 seed, but also to win the conference championship. And I mean, honestly, going into Saturday in that game against Washington State, it really is just a matter of, one, St. Mary's' composure, but also like which Washington State team is going to show up, because what we saw from the Cougs on Wednesday was an absolute blitz from the 3-point line. That's them going 14 for 28 from three. Revavers having a great night, 21 points, 5 for 7 from the field, 5 for 7 from three, I should say. And I mean, the nights when, obviously, I mean, this goes for anybody. If you're shooting lights out from three like that, you're going to win a lot of games. And if you shoot like what we've seen a few of the nights from them, you will not win so many games. So it really is just kind of a matter of the team that shows up. And the last time these two faced, it was ball game for a little bit, and then St. Mary's really pulled away.
Yeah, so you talk about the 3-point variance with the Cougs. You know, some days that won't do it. It just won't. But that game against Pacific, you mentioned Reeve Avers and what he did. I really loved ND Okafor's game personally. In that one, I thought just in general, he controlled what he needed to control inside the arc more than anything. I think his presence stood out. And I think that's exactly the type of force that David Riley's been yearning for, been looking for, and is going to need more of going forward as Washington State looks to, despite the losing record, despite everything that's happened this season, despite some of the bad losses they've had, and with a chance at fourth place, like that, all things considered, they can get themselves to that point. And we'll see if Washington State can try and pull it together over these last couple games and try and get to that point. We'll see. But just in general, they really got on Pacific, especially towards the midway point of the first half. I think that's where kind of things took out. And that's kind of been one of the essential questions with Pacific on the other side is what can they kind of give us on the road more than anything. And they did all right for the first 10 to 12 minutes or so. And then kind of the wheels kind of fell off a little bit. And that's, it's not easy. Road games in this league are not easy, despite the top heaviness, at least in this year's league. Road games are still not easy when you're trying to separate yourself from the pack. And I do think that is the essential question that you propose heading into the St. Mary's game. Which Washington State team shows up? Because last year it was a testy game in Pullman. St. Mary's had to come back and eventually got it done at the very end, just kind of how they do things at the end when they execute in the clutch. So I think that's how I kind of contextualize of what it'll look like, and a close one in Moraga when they played earlier this season.
Yeah, it's like I was probably thinking of a different game, misspoke on that one, but yeah, that one ended up being close toward the end in Moraga earlier this year. But that was a game where Washington State shot 32% from three. Like they did not shoot it as well in that first matchup. So again, them from the 3-point line is going to be, I think, a critical component because they still shot 54% in that game. Ace Glass at 24. But it was in this one, The last time these two met, Josh Dent 26 points the last time these two teams met up. So could see a bounce back game from Dent in this one because he did not have as good of a game against Seattle U. And I'm still kind of waiting to see like how St. Mary's is going to kind of handle the glass, because I think that's been one area where we've seen, I think teams do a much better job against St. Mary's when it comes to rebounding the basketball, and what St. Mary's is going to be able to do on the road in that department is going to be something I'm paying attention to closely. They did have the +9 advantage against Seattle U, but Seattle U has just not been good on the glass all year long. That's just kind of been who they are. So another thing to kind of watch out for in this one is St. Mary's takes on Washington State on Saturday. And we've got, I mean, the slate through the rest of WCC play on Saturday is going to, there's some critical games because no one has really separated themselves in a lot of areas. We know 1, 2, 3 separated by one game. We know that Pacific, Oregon State, Washington State separated by one game. If you want to throw USF in there, that's a game and a half. But then you really look at kind of the bottom tier of the league. I mean, it's 3 teams tied at 5 and 10. You have LMU 1 game behind them, and then you have Pepperdine actually only 1 game behind them, as they have won back-to-back games here as well. The Waves coming alive and with back-to-back wins here in the month of February, maybe reminiscent of what they did a couple years ago, making that run to the semis in the WCC tournament.
A couple of years ago, that was last year, Zach. I mean, come on, we haven't had that long.
No, it actually has been 2 years. That wasn't last year. That was Romar last year, not Ed Schilling year 1.
No.
I was like, wait.
Zach was not prepared for the Malibu Magic. Ed Schilling year 1, the disrespect last year to Mo Odom, Danilo Dozic, Stefan Todorovic.
It's like some of these years are just blending in together. Like it's all just kind of like in a mess in my head of like when all these tournament moments happen. Mo Odom. The Mo Odom is just stuck in my head forever and ever.
Your head. Oh, it's stuck in your head. Oh, gee, man, I wonder what happened in the quarterfinals to warrant all that. I won't talk about it. I'm done talking about it. I was not happy about it. But going forward, I think mutually exclusive to all that and all the fun we're having with this specific topic. Credit to Aaron Clark and the Styles Phipps and the rest of the Waves for doing so, because it's not easy when you're not winning. It really isn't. And when you look at this and everything that's happened, despite everything that's happened, they still have a crack to get out of 12th place, and they can put another team like LMU, for example, into 12th place. So for Pepperdine, when I look at the game against Oregon State, it's not like the Beavers have been the beacon of consistency either. So I think I'll say it's gettable, I think, for Pepperdine. I don't think that's really out of the equation whatsoever. LMU at San Diego, it's interesting to see how the Toreros react with Steve Lavin's announcement more than anything. So, I mean, there's a lot to fight for, especially when you get toward that 9-12 area that you mentioned, Portland and Seattle U. That's going to be a big one in that department. Joel Foxwell, freshman single season scoring record and freshman single season assist record, despite the loss to Pepperdine. I think that deserves a massive shout in itself. So lots of different moments for teams like Pepperdine and Portland, despite, some of the topsy-turvy nature of their records.
I mean, the Portland Seattle U one is going to be massive for both teams, because again, like you're trying to fight out of that bottom tier, and the 3 teams that are at 5 and 10 right now, one of them will probably be the team that escapes that first round that Thursday in Vegas. And that's really, it's critical to be able to stay out of that game, because it gives you the better chance to kind of get deeper into this tournament. I mean, I think about the 3 that are kind of stuck right there between Portland, Seattle U, and San Diego. I mean, I probably feel the best about Seattle U right now when it comes to those 3. But if I'm thinking about who has maybe the best player amongst those, I think it's without question, I'm looking at Portland and Joel Foxwell, just the way he's continuing to just be the way he's played all year long. And Portland being as shorthanded as they've been, that they've been in some of these games, and it's going to just be a rat race to the end, because like Saturday, none of these matchups I think aren't going to be easy. Like St. Mary's at Washington State won't be easy. Portland at Seattle U won't be easy. LMU at San Diego, I think that's going to be a rock fight. That won't be easy. Pepperdine at Oregon State, I don't think that's going to be easy. as well as the Zags have been playing recently, I don't think it's as a foregone conclusion that they're going to roll over on Pacific, because the Tigers needing this win just as bad as they're trying to stave off both Washington State and Oregon State to hold on to that 4th place spot.
And it's another one of those funky one-off games too. It's like, we haven't played this team yet, so late in the season, a scouts all over the place. And I post game to you after USF when the Zags played them, I saw Brian Michelson, who we got to talk to at WCC Media Day. So it's intrigued to kind of poke and prod his mind about the way the scheduling is kind of playing out, and seeing some of the teams where he was very adamant that, we'd despite the good week at Santa Clara and against USF, you still got to take care of business. There are a bunch of good teams in this league. And speaking of the last game that we haven't previewed yet, the Bay Area Brawl for All edition number 239 between Santa Clara and USF, that's going to be I don't care what the spread is in that game. That's a rivalry game. That's blood hate. That's blood feud. Chris Gerlis acknowledged as much as that means a lot to both fan bases. Herb Sendek knows it. He's talked about that in the past. And I think for me, that's I'll kind of look at the emotions of that game. It's USF senior night. It's not a season that they've had whatsoever along that front. So I really am intrigued to see kind of the emotional poise that both these teams come out with. Santa Clara have had a week off after the Gonzaga lost. USF, they're going through it right now. So really intriguing to see what it goes out. I can confirm that Santa Clara University is indeed bussing students up for the game, just like old times. I know St. Mary's has done that when the Gaels and the Broncos have played down at Levy Center in the past. So I'm excited that these schools are starting to get a lot more invested in these local rivalries. I think it needs to sustain for as long as it can, really, in this Bay Area triangle, so to speak. I really want to see more of that going forward. I'm pleased that my alma mater is doing so, and in acknowledging that, yes, the situation of where they are in the NCAA tournament and all that is probably helping in that regard to make that investment. It's still cool to see nonetheless, because with all due respect to the Gonzaga home game, I'm on record, the game at USF is the pound for pound best Santa Clara environment of the season. And there's no doubt about that in my mind.
Santa Clara and San Francisco, it always feels like outside of the St. Mary's Gonzaga game, it's the best WCC game. And even if we include Gonzaga St. Mary's, sometimes it's the best WCC game of the calendar year. These two, you kind of throw out the records, you throw out what the past has been, because this is as close of to a traditional old school college rivalry as I think there is out west, because there aren't too many of those rivalries that are so close in proximity that kind of still feel like a throwback sort of environment. And this game always has that, especially to your point on the hilltop. This one always has that environment, always has that feel. It's fun to be in the building for this one. Thinking about this game itself, this is a critical game for Santa Clara. Every game is critical at this point, but this one really is a must win for Santa Clara, because you can't lose one of the games against not St. Mary's, not Gonzaga. And that's really kind of where Santa Clara is at this stage. They're starting to, you look at some of look at the projections, whatnot. They're kind of sitting on that last 4 in rail right now. They're kind of some people have them in, some people have them out. And so every game, every result is going to be put under a microscope and really looked at a lot. And especially on the national stage it's kind of you can't lose to anybody that isn't really making waves themselves. And so in the case of the game against San Francisco, it's unfortunately the Dons have just not been that team this year. And so Santa Clara, this is what you have to do. You have to just handle your business in this matchup. I think you have to take advantage of the paint. I think this is where I think Alan Graves and Bouke Boye are going to be massively important in this one to kind of stave off what USF is going to try to do inside, which unfortunately has not been much this season. So if Santa Clara can control the paint, control the glass, and really just make it difficult to get anything easy around the rim, I think that's going to put them in a pretty good spot going in. Tyrone Riley coming back from missing a game or two just the other night. He had a decent game against Gonzaga in that matchup, but for the Dons have needed kind of a collective effort, and I don't think we've really seen the collective effort much of the season to this point. And obviously, as deep as we are into this year, I don't know if I'm expecting to see it at any point. But from Santa Clara point of view, I mean, I know that the coaching staff has done a good job of making sure that their guys are just focused on one game at a time. But it's going to be hard to not look up and just start to think about it's like winning, like not winning this game means a whole lot of bad for Santa Clara's potential for March. But I do like Santa Clara in this one. I just think that they've done too much good over the course of the season, and they have avoided all of those pitfalls, all of the speed bumps we thought they might hit in conference play. It hasn't happened. And we're now, with Santa Clara only have 3 games left, I would be hard pressed to think that it's going to happen at this point.
Yeah, they've certainly climbed out of that pit that was Loyola Chicago and where they were left after that point, heading towards conference slate. And when you look at the speed bump, so to speak, phrase, they got 2 more left of those, USF and Oregon State. And I look at it from the fan perspective, or actually, let me start with the coaching perspective. When Chris Carlson, when he asked to preview this game, said, he understands that Santa Clara's fighting for an NCAA tournament berth, similar to when he was the head assistant to Todd Golden and USF was doing. And he said, we'd like to have something to say about that. And, I look at it from the fans' perspective. I know USF fans would love nothing more than just to ruin the hell out of the Broncos season right here, right now. I think that if you want to talk about, I'm leaving here with something, that is exactly what it would be if the Dons were to come out on top on Saturday. And I look at Santa Clara, I do concur that they have been taking care of their business in conference play. And I think going into this one, you got to be a tone setter. I think the crowd is going to be 50-50, but I think the noise is going to be with the red and black. I think that is going to be without a shadow of a doubt, especially with what I've heard from the amount of people that already do show up to this game, but now with the circumstances of USF not being as good this season and Santa Clara trying to take that next step. I've heard there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot of red in the building. Brandon Pajimski is going to be there. At least that's what he said. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But I'm looking for the Broncos to be a tone setter. You had the bye on Wednesday. Now what can you do and kind of channel that energy against a rival that's on the ropes? The last thing you want to do, and kind of what they have done in recent years at the Hilltop after Pajimski, is they've gotten ahead by double digits and then gave it away against the Dons both times. Now there was a special circumstance in 2024 with the fight and all that, but still. Like that, the fact of the matter is they had those double-digit leads. Christian Heyman was a part of it, his freshman season. So really just want to see how they be a tone setter and really not let USF up off the mat.
You mentioned one with the fight. The other one, Khalil Shabazz just turning the Superman in Vegas being the other. But I agree. It's like you've had a week off. You've had time to prep for this one. You've had time to rest. You've had time to kind of really game plan for this USF squad. This is a great opportunity, but USF can play spoiler. But it's going to be just a fun matchup in this one. It always is. I always look forward to seeing this game. That's why it's almost like it is for anyone who doesn't actually pay that close of attention, may not understand how good of a game this is. Of like this, I mean, the competitiveness of this one is, this is like a wild kind of stretch, whatever else. But like, think of like that Duke, North Carolina sort of like intensity feels like it always comes to USF and Santa Clara for some odd reason. It's no joke in this game. And I think it'll just be a lot of fun to see how this one goes, because obviously there's a lot at stake for both these squads. But going into this one, like, I can't not pick Santa Clara, not think that Santa Clara is going to be able to handle their business and do this again. All you have to do is get a W. They don't have to have style points. They don't have to do anything in this one outside of just get out of that building with more points than the Dons. That's it.
And that's been hard to come by. They've lost the last 2 games, I think, at War Memorial by combined like 4 points, I think, or something like that. So they got to find a way to get it done. You mentioned the competitive nature of this rivalry. Santa Clara leads the all-time series 121-117. This is competitive as it gets. And, I would argue, at least from the basketball side, I think it's a better rivalry than Cal Stanford. Like this is one of the pre-premier rivalries in the Bay Area out west and all that. People just don't give it the shine just because of the general enrollment and the size of school and all that. But it's pound for pound. You mentioned outside of Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and for me, especially up in SF. Like, I love the game a million times more. With all due respect to my alma mater, I love the game a million times more up at War Memorial, and I'm excited for it. Come Saturday night, I'll be in the building to go indulge in some Bay Area rivalry basketball.
All right, as we enter what is the penultimate WCC regular season weekend, this is going to be a lot of fun. These next few games, we'll be back on Monday to kind of highlight and talk about what we saw on Saturday, what we are going to see this coming week, because guess what? It's the final week. And this one, Santa Clara's got a big night. St. Mary's has got 2 big nights, and Gonzaga's got another big one too. This coming week is going to be, to use an old wrestling term, this is going to be a slobber knocker of a week coming up in the WCC.
It's going to be a showdown, and we're excited. Zach is going to end up at UCU Pavilion. I'm going to end up all over the place, all over the Tour de Bay area. This is what we signed up for. This is what we're excited for. And not only to close out the rest of this regular season, we're excited to see you all in Vegas too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening to the podcast. Be sure to follow along on social media at unofficial WCC Pod. That's Thomas. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.